I'm Malli, founder, co-founder, and treasurer of the Crash Outs Anonymous organization. If you or someone you know suffers from moderate to severe crash outs, please call or text our hotline at 1-800. See, I'm not even mad. You had your location off from midnight to 3 a.m. As far as I'm concerned, we're done. What's about to piss me off is you have yet to answer my question. Who the fuck were you with? Or please visit our website at www.crashoutanonymous.org. Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be discussing the 1996 film A Thin Line Between Love and Hate, as suggested by these lovely subscribers here. So starting off, we have Darnell. He is our main character, and he's somewhat of a ladies' man. He has a lot of women in rotation, if you will. He's very flirty, very arrogant, and he loves the ladies. Similarly, his best friend T also loves the ladies. He's not as successful getting women as Darnell is, as we see in the beginning of the movie, just basically throughout the movie. T isn't as lucky with the ladies as Darnell is. It's more so his approach that's a little jarring, and we'll see an example of that as we get further into the plot. T and Darnell manage Chocolate City, which is a nightclub owned by Smitty. Smitty is an older gentleman. Because he's getting a little older, he's looking to hire on partners to alleviate some of his workload dealing with the club. And he presents this as an opportunity to Darnell and T. So as T and Darnell are walking outside from their meeting with Smitty, they spot a beautiful woman who we'll come to know as Brandy. So of course, both of them being ladies' men, they both take their shot at Brandy. T goes first, flops. He flops, if I've ever seen a flop. And you can kind of tell T is the type of man where if a woman curbs him, he'll become disrespectful. And that's exactly what happens in this situation. Whereas when Darnell approaches Brandy, he has a much more softer approach, a much more subtle approach, and invites her to the VIP section of Chocolate City, which honestly is not saying much, because that same day he's invited multiple women to the VIP section of Chocolate City. So Brandy declines, but Darnell still insists that she comes through and checks out the club. And so it's not looking good until nighttime rolls around and Brandy actually shows up to the club. So Darnell is shocked that she's there, and he goes to approach her, and Brandy makes it very clear that she's only interested in visiting the club and not seeing him. Seeing that Darnell has just been rejected, T and their friend are basically clowning Darnell. Darnell wagers that he will hook up with Brandy, and once he does, he's gonna call T, and T will have to greet him as "you the man" from there on forward. And if you're a lover girl like me, you're probably thinking, oh my god, we're gonna have a she's all that moment where he's gonna actually spend time with her and realize that he loves her character and her personality. But no, there's no Freddie Prinze Jr., okay? There's no Lil' Kim. That is not what happens. So Brandy leaves before Darnell has another chance to approach her. So Darnell runs outside to catch up with Brandy, but she's already in her car, and he's able to notate her license plate. Not so much her license plate, but the company name written on her license plate. Darnell goes back inside Chocolate City, and then we are introduced to Mia. Mia is a childhood friend of Darnell, and she just returned from the military, specifically the Air Force. And Darnell has a proper crush on Mia. And by a proper crush, I mean he likes her, and likes her beyond a sexual context. So the following day, Darnell and Mia are catching up, and Darnell uses this opportunity to gauge Mia's dating status and her relationship status, and to see if she's dating anybody in the Air Force, and is wondering if that's a driving reason for her to want to return back. She checks him and tells him that if she decides to go back, it'll be because she wants to, and it wouldn't have anything to do with a man. So of course, Darnell is happy to hear this until he hears a knock at the door. So Mia goes to get ready, and at the door is Reggie, Mia's gentleman friend. So Darnell is belittling him and very clearly does not like the idea of Mia being with Reggie. So for my viewers that court women, let's say you're in Reggie's position, just out of curiosity, what would you do in a situation like that? Like, you come through to pick up your date and there's another dude there and he's belittling your line of work, and he very clearly doesn't like the fact that you're there. What do? So Mia goes off on her date with Reggie, who also is Joanna Man. Loved that little tidbit. And Darnell continues to pursue Brandy because, you know, remember, he has this whole bet going on, which is like, why are you even interested in who Mia is dating if you're over here, you know, trying to win bets and shit? As we previously know, Darnell knows Brandy's line of work and what company she works for. It's her own company. She's a successful realtor. We love that. On the back of her license plate. So Darnell marches into Brandy's office unannounced and uninvited. He has a big ass bouquet of flowers and just walks into her office. She's very clearly on a business call. He interrupts her. She sees him and is like, what the fuck is this guy doing here? She hangs up and has her associate bring in security. So then Darnell knocks over her Lalique Crystal figurine. I know I sound really upset about the Lalique Crystal being knocked over, but I had no clue what that was before I seen this movie. Not a single clue. And this whole interaction makes me like a wee bit nervous, a little bit anxious. Like if I declined a guy's advances and he pops up at my workplace, that's frightening. I don't like that. I know that this is somebody's, story somewhere. I know that there's a woman that's like, oh yes, I declined Charles many a moon before he stormed into my office and insisted I let him take me out to dinner. And then it's like, they live happily ever after. Just for me, I feel like this is a bit much. I don't like it. But to each their own, but I don't like this shit. It's weird. So then Brandy is at a house showing because like I said, she's a realtor and she's prepared to show a house to a potential buyer. And the potential buyer is Darnell. And mind you, it's a $1.2 million house because he's clearly not there for the house. Darnell is clearly there for Brandy. And mama mia, let me tell you, this scene, Brandy's ends are bumped with a capital T at the end. It's giving very much Brandy Neutron. Anyways, as Brandy is giving Darnell a tour of the house, she sees that there's a little baby bird, Lalique Crystal figurine on a mantle. And so she's like, how did this get here? And Darnell apparently got that for her, which is a kind gesture. Not because it's an expensive gift, which I looked up these Lalique crystals and they go from a couple $100s to a few $1,000s. Who would have thought? What makes it such a great gift for Brandy is that it's something specific to her and her interests. Brandy folds, which also same. I love gifts that are specific to my interests. I feel like they could be very well thought out and they don't have to be expensive. I once had a guy get me a ceramic mug, like merch from a movie that I liked, and I swooned. I said, oh my God, I'm gonna marry him. Haven't seen him in years. So Darnell and Brandy start dating. It's like we have a little montage. They're going on various dates. We see Brandy start to loosen up a bit. Her tough exterior melts away, and we get to see a more soft, more gentle side of Brandy as she's getting comfortable with Darnell. So at some point, Brandy and Darnell go horseback riding, and Darnell very clearly does not know how to ride a horse because as he's riding his horse kind of gets a little bit out of control and he falls off his horse, and Brandy is trying to explain to him how to ride a horse. She's giving a demonstration and is explaining how to mount the horse and how to ride the horse, and Darnell of course turns the conversation very sexual and he starts kissing her. They start kissing and he like holds on to her. He starts grabbing on her booty and Brandy becomes very uncomfortable and kind of pushes Darnell away, and Darnell gets upset, which is a red flag if I've ever seen a red fucking flag. If you're with somebody and it physically, you know what I mean, you're kind of like wanting a little bit of distance and they get mad, it's time to wrap it up. It's time to go somewhere else. That's never a good sign. So later on, Darnell and Mia are playing one-on-one basketball, that is. At some point, Reggie pulls up. Mia goes to say hi. They exchange pleasantries. He gives her a little kiss on the cheek and he drives off. And Darnell is upset, which is crazy because he's whole ass trying to pursue Brandy. And from Reggie's perspective, I honestly feel bad for him. If I were dating a man or interested in a man and his girl best friend was behaving like Darnell, I'm taking a step back respectfully, because who am I to interrupt a friends to lover arc? Because clearly that's what's going on here, right? And I think it's so important for people to have platonic relationships with a variety of people, including people of the opposite sex and from different walks of life and different lifestyles. But if that friend wants to fuck you and you're still friends with them, I just feel like that's not a genuine relationship right there. I just feel like intentions can be obscured along with opinions, because for example, there was nothing really wrong with Reggie. Like, he was just kind of there. He didn't have any immediate negative traits that we could see, at least, yet Darnell just completely disapproved of him. And I feel like you would want a friend to root for your happiness, period. Whether that meant Mia going back to the Air Force, whether that meant Mia being with Reggie, whatever it was, he should have been happy for her. But instead, Darnell was thinking selfishly, like, don't go back to the Air Force. I want you to be here with me. Don't be with Reggie. I want you to be with me. All the while, he's trying to fuck Brandy on a bet. Crazy. So it's ladies' night at Chocolate City, and Darnell spots Brandy, and Brandy goes to hug him, and Darnell is acting really distant, and Brandy is talking about how she wants to be there with her man, you know, Darnell. And Darnell says that he isn't her man, and that if he was her man, that they would be having sex. Ew. Ick. So Brandy acknowledges that Darnell has been patient with her, and she's explaining that it'll pay off when she's ready. And he goes, when? I'm like, girl, run. Oh my gosh. I'm so shocked that she didn't get the ick, but I also do understand Brandy's perspective. It kind of sucks when you're aware that you're guarded and you're dating. I think because Brandy was aware that when it came to men that she was very guarded, she was overcompensating by overlooking some of the stuff that Darnell was saying and doing. He did a very decent job at making her feel like she was the problem. So me and Reggie walk over. Darnell introduces Brandy to both of them, and it's very awkward. Brandy is being very cold towards Mia, like she won't even shake her hand. And quickly Darnell tries to divert the situation and tells Mia and Reggie that they have a bottle of champagne waiting for them because, you know, he manages the club, so they got the hookup on that. Brandy was like, can I get some champagne too? She's like, any champagne for me, sir? And he's like, no, because you won't fuck me. He doesn't say that, but he basically tells Brandy if she's not ready to have sex, then she needs to stop wasting his time, which is crazy. She ends up leaving. The night at Chocolate City continues on, and then there's like a series of unfortunate events. First, Mia tells Reggie that she doesn't want anything more than a friendship right now. Reggie is like, oh, that's unfortunate, but he's fine, he's chilling, it's not that deep. And then a fight breaks out. And let me tell you, the fight that breaks out has nothing to do with the plot of the movie. It's just there's a particular dialogue during this fight scene that has me alarmed. So two patrons are getting in a fight. One of them is Tyrone, who is played by the late and iconic Tommy Lister Jr., or as we all know him as Debo from Friday. Darnell assists in breaking up the fight, and he tells Tyrone, like, hey, you know, you can't do that here. Like, you need to calm down. And Tyrone says,
fuck you talking about, no punk? You making my dick hard.
What kind of figure of speech? Like, who says that? If somebody were to say that to me and the context is not a mutually sexual interaction, I'm calling an adult. And yes, I'm aware I am an adult, but I'm calling a higher rank adult. Okay, I'm calling an ancestor, because what? After that, an even bigger fight ensues. After everything mellows down, Darnell is kind of off to the side, like nursing his fist, and Mia walks up to check on him, and he kind of like lashes at her and throws a jab about her being there with Reggie, which I'm like, literally, what? I'm like, you are currently actively gaslighting Brandy to get her to have sex with you, Darnell. So it's after hours at Chocolate City, and Darnell is chatting it up with the other male staff members of Chocolate City, and they're basically talking about women, and this conversation is what nightmares are made of as a woman dating this day and age. So Darnell explains, if you give them too little, then they'll leave. If you give them too much, you can't get rid of them. You gotta give them, basically saying that you have to give women just enough for them to want to stay, but not commit. So coincidentally, as they're having this conversation, Brandy pages Darnell. That's a phrase you haven't heard in a while, huh? You know, I used to own a pager. I know, I look fucking phenomenal for 62, don't I? So for my younger viewers, Brandy hits up Darnell and invites him over to her place. So Brandy's at home, and she's literally trying to talk herself into trusting Darnell, into having fun, into letting go. And it is just a sad sight to see. And let me tell you, Lynn Whitfield in this movie she ate. And I feel like it's not talked about enough, because the way that she portrayed being unhinged, chef's kiss. She did really good. Darnell comes over, they're having some champagne, and Brandy expresses that she understands that he wants to be intimate, and she's saying that she wants to trust him, but there are things from her past that they need to talk about. And Brandy is basically saying that she's scared, and Darnell assures her that she can trust him. And Brandy specifically asked Darnell if there's anybody else that he has feelings for. So me and you, first name that comes to mind is Mia, right? Darnell tells her that there is nobody because he's just concerned about getting in her pants. Brandy asks Darnell if he loves her, and Darnell breaks his only rule, and tells Brandy that he loves her, and then proceeds to say that shit at least 3 more times. And he goes to kiss her, and she tells him to stop and wait, and I can tell you right now that that scene did not age very well. The next scene, Brandy and Darnell are in bed. They're in the midst of hooking up, and Brandy circles back to her past and is telling Darnell that they need to talk about it, and Brandy reveals that she murdered her husband. Brandy says that her husband was an abusive, evil man and she had to kill him. So Darnell is paused at this point. He's very clearly stunned. He's very clearly freaked out by this piece of information. Darnell pretends to understand, even though he's very clearly freaked out, and Darnell and Brandy have sex. And Darnell was not exaggerating. Immediately after he has sex with Brandy, he calls T to brag and tell him. And then we got a little bit of a jump scare and it's like the good old-fashioned jump scares that I feel like we don't see enough anymore because everybody always anticipates them when they happen in scary movies. There's something obscuring our character's vision, and then once it's back to normal, there's somebody standing there. So that's what happens. Darnell is looking in Brandy's fridge, and then when he goes to shut it, Brandy is standing right there. Now, Brandy and Darnell are back in bed. Brandy is sound asleep, and Darnell looks terrified. He's looking regretful, but clearly not too regretful, because the next day, outside of Chocolate City, Darnell is bragging to T how he slept with Brandy. So Smitty is outside with them, and as Smitty is leaving, he tells Darnell and T that their numbers from last night's ladies' night looks really good, and that he's gonna call his lawyer, because as I mentioned, he's hoping to make Darnell and T partners. So Smitty and Darnell have a little sidebar, and they're basically talking about women, and Darnell is shocked that Smitty is loyal to his wife, which is a crazy thing to be shocked at. So Smitty explains that every day he sees a woman that he's attracted to, but that nothing is worth jeopardizing his marriage and the relationship that he shares with his wife, which I love that. And I love it because it's real. I think a lot of people think that loyalty in a relationship means only having eyes for one person, but I really feel like it means having enough respect for one person to not compromise your relationship. So just as they're having this conversation, Brandy pulls up in her limo and then takes Darnell on a shopping spree to get him a whole new wardrobe. And Darnell accepts, which is strange, weird behavior, because he doesn't even like her. And me personally, I don't let a man or really anyone do shit for me unless I genuinely like them or would return the favor. So after their shopping spree, Darnell and Brandy are in the back of her limousine, and Brandy is encouraging Darnell to quit his job and tells him that she can buy a club for him. That way they can spend all their time together. Depending on how much you like someone, that could sound like music to your ears, or it could sound like you're listening to a stage 5 clinger trying to cling. Darnell is taken aback by this and tells Brandy that they can't spend all their time together. And so Brandy tells Darnell that he can take the limousine for the day and go handle whatever business that he needs to handle, but tells him to come back to her place so they can have a candlelit dinner. Darnell is hesitant about this and is kind of sounding hesitant on coming back to her place. So then Brandy adds the tidbit about it being her birthday, and so under those circumstances, Darnell is like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll come back since it's your birthday. So Darnell takes Brandy's limo and he stops by his mom's place to see his sister off for her senior prom. And Darnell also uses this as an opportunity to intimidate her prom date Rodney, and apparently Rodney's older brother is a known player, and Darnell is not very excited about his little sister going on a date with him. And we'll discuss the irony of that a little bit later. Darnell's mom tells him that Mia plans on going back to the Air Force. So Darnell finds Mia. She's about to go bowling with her cousin Peaches. Peaches does not like Darnell because Darnell is a player. Duh. So ultimately, Mia ditches Peaches to go with Darnell. And Mia notices the new clothes. She notices the limo, obviously, and she has questions about it. And at first, Darnell lies and says that it's a part of his new image since he's going to be partial owner of Chocolate City. And then he reveals that it's all Brandy's, that Brandy bought him new clothes and that it's Brandy's limousine. You can tell Mia is annoyed by this, and to assure her that he doesn't have feelings for Brandy, Darnell takes all the clothes out of the limousine and starts throwing it in the street. So nighttime rolls around, and of course, as promised, Darnell goes back to Brandy to celebrate her birthday. I'm fucking lying. He doesn't go back to Brandy. He stays out all night with Mia, and they're reminiscing about their childhood. He ends up kissing Mia and ends up telling her that he wants to be a one-woman man from now on and that he wants to be with her. And mind you, Brandy is at home as the night is progressing and as it's getting later in the night, we keep cutting back between Brandy and Mia and Darnell, and Brandy is slowly but surely crashing out. Darnell, like I said, skips the dinner entirely and spends the night with Mia. They don't hook up, they're just kissing at this point, and they have a full makeout session first thing in the morning. Don't love that. As they're making out first thing in the morning, we hear a knock at the door. So Darnell is like, oh, I'll go see who it is. He goes, answers the door. There's nobody there. We're confused. He looks down, and it's Brandy's birthday cake with a butcher knife in it. Or like it's like a knife. You know what I mean? I feel like for that kind of cake, you really need a butter knife. So this is definitely a threat. So Darnell hides the cake, like he tosses it off to the side on the porch and does not tell Mia. And not only does he not tell Mia, he tries to hook up with her, and Mia says that that's something that she wants to wait on. And now all of a sudden, that is a perfect, respectable boundary that he completely understands. Meanwhile, with Brandy, he treated her like a damn leper because she didn't want to have sex. I feel like this is like a perfect example of what they mean when they say guys know better. They just know better for the woman that they actually want to be with. Afterwards, he goes to Brandy's house and very nonchalantly apologizes for missing dinner and then proceeds to break up with her. Brandy says that it's fine and that she was getting bored anyways. We know it's not fine. And when Brandy says that she was getting bored, why does Darnell look the slightest bit offended? And from Brandy's perspective, I would have been absolutely stunned by this. He sat there, pursued her, popped up at her job twice, told her he loved her, and is now very casually, very callously breaking up with her. Like, the fact that she wasn't even interested in him to begin with is insane. It reminds me of a line from one of my favorite poems. If you'll allow me, I'll recite it to you. I should have listened to my first mind and told your ass no the first time. Tried to spare this feelings, and now he think he hurting mine. A shamananai. So after leaving Brandy's, Darnell goes on a breakup tour and starts breaking things off with the women that he previously had a relationship with. So now we're back at Darnell's place. It's the following day. He wakes up and he smells food burning. There's a fire alarm going off, and it's Brandy. Brandy is in his kitchen. She done a BB, breaking and entering, burning bacon, and she is behaving very nonchalantly. None of that happened the day before. And Darnell is very upset with her. He's cussing at her. He's yelling at her. He's telling her to get the fuck out. And Brandy is trying to console him. And she's like, oh, you're just being cranky. And she's like, you told me that you loved me. She's like trying to hug on him. And she's like, you're just cranky right now. And as she's trying to hug him, he's like pushing her away. And then eventually like shoves her against the wall. But this kind of snaps her out of it. She goes from being lovey-dovey to being kind of like how she was towards the beginning of the movie, where she's a little bit more stiff. She's a little bit more stern. And she basically tells him, you put your hands on the wrong one. And then she leaves. And so hear me out. The feeling of Brandy popping up at his house and cooking in his kitchen and stuff feels unhinged, but it didn't feel violent. It didn't feel threatening. And given that her intention was to make him breakfast and repair their relationship, I feel like his response was a little bit too sharp. And it completely dismisses the fact that he manipulated her into having sex with him, told her that he was in love with her, missed her birthday dinner to be with another woman, and then casually breaks up with her the following day is kind of crazy to me. And the fact that she was there on some friendly shit, on some I'm gonna, make him some bacon shit, it could have gone way south. I'm just saying that he could have woken up to a completely different situation when she popped up at his house that morning. Like, he woke up with sausage on the skillet. She could have spawned into Brandy Bobbitt and woke up to sausage on the side of the road. Are you picking up what I'm putting down right now? I feel like he should have handled that with a little bit more care, because he already didn't handle her with care during the duration of their situation. And I feel like he should have owned up and took responsibility for the aftermath. Like, this is very clearly unhinged behavior, and this is very clearly the brink of a crash out. And I think he could have handled it more delicately, and he did it. Instead, he yelled at her and shoved her. So now Darnell is out and about with Mia. Mia still is none the wiser that all of this is going on with Brandy. Mia is waiting in Darnell's car while he's picking up his dry cleaning. He's walking across the street to get to his car, and nearly gets hit by a car, presumably being driven by Brandy. And he gets in the car and still doesn't tell Mia what's going on. And I get so irritated in situations like this in movies where like it's like you have your fatal attractions, you have your swim fans. We've talked about this before. And the person doesn't tell their significant other what's going on. And it's like common sense would tell you if this person is getting violent with you and they're trying to be your lover, they're gonna get pissy at the current lover. So I'm like, you kind of need to keep your significant other or your partner in the loop of what's going on. Otherwise, you're kind of putting them in harm's way as well. Darnell is at Chocolate City during the daytime, doing whatever clubs do during the day, and he's confiding in T, telling him what's going on with his situation with Brandy. And as he's doing so, he gets a phone call from the hospital saying that Mia has been in a terrible accident. He gets to the hospital, he doesn't even park his car, like he's rushing in, goes to the patient room, and it's literally Brandy. So basically, Brandy beat the shit out of herself and blamed Darnell and had him arrested at the hospital. Like she literally got some oranges, filled a sock or maybe some panty and just literally. Now at this point we're starting to ask questions like, was her ex-husband actually abusive towards her? Because she seemed to know exactly what to do to injure herself. And she seemed very comfortable doing it. So now Darnell is at his mom's place, and every time, and like this has nothing to do with the plot, but every time I see Della Reese in a movie, out loud I say W as in Willacoochee, Georgia. And if you know, you know. Anyways, Darnell is at his mom's place, and he's lucky there were no charges pressed. Darnell's mom fully believes that he did not put his hands on Brandy. And just as they're having this conversation, we hear a car alarm going off outside. Darnell runs outside and Brandy is out there in her car and she's thrown a brick into the windshield of his vehicle. So they're arguing back and forth. Darnell's mom hears the altercation, so she runs out. Now she's yelling at Brandy. Darnell's mother tells him to get a restraining order. So Darnell goes to the police station to get a restraining order and they don't believe him. And I'm not sure if it's because of the altercation that he had with the police earlier that day when he was at the hospital with Brandy, but they don't believe him. Obviously, he does not get the restraining order. And this part is like funny, but not funny because it's a fucked up situation. But I think it's just because, you know, it's fucking Martin Lawrence. He's hilarious. And Darnell sees that Brandy took tires off of his car. His car is like smoking. The windows are smashed in. The rear view mirrors are knocked over. And I think it's crazy because he was literally parked outside the police department. Night rolls around. Darnell is out with Mia and he still does not tell her all of this has happened. And very clearly Darnell is freaked out. So they're sitting down on a park bench. He's like kind of looking around. He's very much paranoid. Mia kind of perceives this as him not being ready, which I don't know how she did that, but she perceives this as him not being ready to be in a relationship and to be with only one woman. And basically she expresses her concern of him wanting to go back to his old ways. So Darnell assures her that he wants to be with her and he tells her that he loves her. And he calls Darnell while he's with Mia and she's basically telling him to break up with her or she's gonna hurt her. She's basically threatening Mia if he doesn't break up with her. Well, fast forward later on to the night, they're at Chocolate City and Darnell breaks up with Mia. And he's basically saying that they're moving too fast and that they need to take a break. And we know why he's breaking up with Mia, but she does not, and she seems surprised. And I'm almost a little surprised that she's surprised. I mean, you know, I like to think I'm a cool gal, right? But I'm not so presumptuous to believe that a man is going to change his lifestyle for me or change anything about himself for me. I wouldn't really want a man to change his ways for me specifically. Something about that just feels a little unstable. I would want him to change for himself, but that's just me. So later on that night, everybody's home from Chocolate City and someone has set Chocolate City on fire. T goes to Mia's place trying to find Darnell and he realizes that Darnell isn't there, explains the real reason that Darnell broke up with her. And so now Mia and T are off to the races to try to find Darnell. So Darnell goes to Chocolate City and sees what happened and Smitty is upset and Darnell explains that he knows who did it. And if I was Smitty, I would have been like, your drama brought this to my establishment. So Darnell goes to confront Brandy, and T and Mia are not far off his trail. So Darnell goes to confront Brandy. He walks through the front door. Immediately, she knocks him unconscious and ties him up. So when he wakes up, Brandy begins her villainous speech and she pulls out a gun. So now we have a whole other concern here. During Brandy's villainous rant, she says something that I found to be profound. I found it to be poetic. She says, "We are not your bitches. We are not your hookers, your whores, or your honeys. We do just fine without your dick or your money." I like that. I fucks with it. Picasso. Brandy instructs Darnell to get up and to start heading upstairs. And Darnell is being a little feisty and says, "Fuck you, bitch," which is like, this is bold dialogue for somebody who's tied up and does not have a weapon of any sorts. We know Brandy. If Brandy beat her own ass, what is stopping her from beating your ass? And so she like kicks him in his private regions, and so then he listens to her. He starts heading upstairs. She tells him to get in the bathtub, and again there's back talk, which I'm like, refuses. She, surprise surprise, shoots him, and so now he's laying in the bathtub, and she kind of prompts him to apologize. Like she's like, "Is there anything that you want to say to me?" And then he apologizes, which I'm like, yo, why did it take all of that? Brandy is talking about her previous marriage and how her husband cheated on her with a blonde and how she can't trust him, and how she now cannot trust Darnell because he cheated on her with Mia, who she refers to as a nappy head. She's recalling how she found her husband cheating on her, and as she's explaining it, she goes to throw a radio into the bathtub, but Darnell quickly jumps up and kind of pushes past her, knocking her down, and he runs and kind of hides off somewhere. Brandy gathers herself, shoots at him through the door. Downstairs, T and Mia have just arrived. They hear the gunshot. They kind of crouch down. T tries to call 911, but then Brandy pops up behind him, knocks him unconscious. And Mia sees that T is unconscious. She goes to check up on him, and then Brandy comes from behind her with the gun, of course, and tells Mia to go upstairs. Then here goes Nappy Head talking shit. Between her and Darnell, I'm like, she has a gun and we know she's prepared to use it. Like, try not to antagonize her. Brandy is yelling out, telling Darnell that he needs to come out or she's gonna shoot Mia. Brandy starts counting down, and at the very last second, Mia pushes the gun out of the way, and Darnell comes out of the closet and kind of pushes everybody, like he kind of shoves his way out of the closet, and then there's gunshots fired. Either one of the bullets shot the window and then they fall out the window, or we're looking at the world's most fragile window and they simply pushed through and broke through the window. Either way, they end up landing in the pool. Darnell ends up surviving. He ends up in the hospital, and he's kind of reflecting on his situation with Brandy, and he's saying that he's learned his lesson. The lesson being, don't say I love you if you don't mean it. And as Darnell is reflecting, he's showing genuine sympathy for Brandy and her situation. It actually seems very apologetic for her. It seems that Brandy was arrested for some time and then eventually released. And that's basically how the movie ends. Like, it shows her getting her mugshots and then it shows her out in the world free. What frustrates me about A Thin Line Between Love and Hate is all conceptual, like viewing the situation specifically from some of the characters where I feel frustrated for them. It's also kind of unsettling seeing Martin Lawrence playing Darnell. Every other character I see of Martin Lawrence is such a likable person. They're likable, they're comedic, and Darnell, although very comedic, was infuriating in how he handled Brandy throughout the movie. Like, he just flat out irked me. And I feel like there's nothing wrong with being single and playing the field and having multiple partners. It's like, to each their own. It's not for me. Like, I know for me, casual situations aren't it. I'm abstinent myself. It's like, I do not judge. I'm very sex positive. To each their own. It's just my own personal preference. I have friends that are promiscuous. I have male friends that are promiscuous. I have female friends that are very promiscuous. And you know, they're thriving, they're fine, everything's great. The people that they have their interactions with are aware of the dynamic that they have and the intention of their relationship. Everyone is vibing and happy and fucking, and I love that for them. Like, manipulating someone into having sex by telling them that you love them is villainous. That's crazy behavior. And I think very obviously the dynamic between Brandy and Darnell was upsetting. I think because of how nonchalant Darnell was about the situation, even breaking up with Brandy, he kind of doesn't acknowledge in the slightest that he courted her, pursued her. She, declined his advances, but he still kept pushing, convinced her that he was in love with her, even though he actually wasn't. It's like he completely disregards this. And I feel he does such a good job at disregarding it that the initial audience that viewed this movie, because every time I talk about this movie with somebody, they have watched it with new lenses, they've watched it recently, and they're like, I don't remember it being like this. Everybody wholeheartedly believed that Brandy was the villain and completely unjustified. Now, I will say the crash out was insane, okay? The crash out was a lot. I can't speak on that. After my last video, I found out that y'all are some crash outs, okay? So I'm not judging. I can fully validate what Brandy was feeling. Like, her emotions towards Darnell, I feel, were completely valid. And it's like she's upset, she's hurt because he literally manipulated her into going outside of her boundaries. It's fine for somebody to extend their boundaries, move within their boundaries, move outside of their boundaries, but to do so solely on pretenses that are false as fuck is that's an unfortunate thing. That's very sad. There is a dynamic that we briefly see in the movie that I do want to talk about that also pissed me off, and that is the dynamic between Nikki and Darnell. Nikki is somebody that we meet early on in the movie. She's one of the ladies that Darnell hooks up with regularly. I feel frustrated by Nikki's character because she is under the impression that because her and Darnell are hooking up, that is her man. And initially I was like, well, there's no telling what Darnell told Nikki for her to be under this impression. But then he flat out tells her, like, we're not in a relationship. We never said that we were in a relationship. And it's like, after hearing this, I kind of wanted Nikki to be like, oh, word, I'm out, I'm done. But instead she doubles down and is basically like, I'm not somebody that you just sleep with and then keep to the side. And I'm like, he already told you what his intentions were. And I feel like there is like a level of accountability that needs to be there where it's like, after a certain point, you kind of got to just take the L and say, you know what, it is what it is at this point. I'm going to say this, and it's coming from a place of love, and my tone may or may not progress into frustration.
Also, and I'm going to touch your hand when I say this.
It's only because I want better for you. Just because you hook up with a guy does not make him your man. Hooking up with a guy will not make him your man. And I don't care if y'all spend all day, every day together. I don't care if y'all hold hands. I don't care if it walks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck. I don't give a damn if it looks like a duck. If y'all have not explicitly had the conversation that y'all are an exclusive item, I would not make that assumption just because y'all have had sex. And it's like, granted, there are men that do manipulate the situation where it's like they do everything that where, like I said, it looks like a duck, it looks like a relationship, it feels like a relationship. You probably met his mama. I just want you to know, just so you are well equipped and knowledgeable, that that does not make him your man. Keep your heart 3 stacks is all I'm saying. I had to have this conversation with one of my homegirls recently, and I was like, girl, I was like, we are 62 years old. You gotta lock in and stand up. And I think where I was getting specifically frustrated with Nikki's character is because, like I said, it was like almost as if she was begging Darnell to treat her better. And I'm like, if you're in a position where you gotta do that, you get up and go and get it where the getting's good, and go where a man wants to do those types of things for you and you don't have to beg or ask, because you know that there's men out there, that like you and that will do those things for you without you even having to ask. Did you know that? Another thing that it kind of barely frustrated me, I just thought it was really ironic, and that was Darnell being extremely protective over his sister going to the senior prom. And I don't think that him being protective is a bad thing. It's just ironic that he wants to keep her away from the type of guy he is. Would you encourage your sister, your daughter, your mother to date a man like you? And I'm like, really process that and think about what that means. If the answer is no, maybe look in the mirror and kind of, establish what changes need to be made, or why you are the way that you are. I don't know. Some things just require a little perspective. Mia did not upset me because even as a fictional character, Regina King can do no wrong. I still had some qualms, not even with her, it's just the situation revolving Mia and Darnell's dynamic. Mia knowing Darnell's history with women and being a player, I feel should have had an impact on whether or not she got with him. Like the concept of being a man's exception. Like I don't want to be like I want to hold a special place in my significant other's life. I don't want it to be a situation where I'm like the only woman that they respect in their life. I just don't want to be that kind of exception. Darnell becoming a decent guy overnight is also alarming. I feel like that's something that I would want him to sit with on his own for a while. He told Mia that he wanted to be with her and then broke up with all of his other women, when I feel like it should have been the other way around. I wish that there was a grace period in between the two. I, of course, felt a lot of frustration for Brandy's character. How Darnell handled her was insane, and I totally resonated with her in certain aspects. I feel like the way that those events turned out, I would have probably crashed out too. And like I said, it probably would have just looked a little bit different because, I'm not gonna beat myself up. I'm not gonna, jeopardize my freedoms. I'm typically the type to like move on as quickly as humanly possible, where as soon as somebody shows me who they are, it's like I don't like to waste time dwelling on being fooled or tricked. I do take time to reflect and go, okay, what went wrong here? What is the overall takeaway? What is something that I can take from this and gain from it instead of letting it consume me and my outlook on men and relationships? Because I mean, it's like realistically and statistically, not all men can be bad, and that alone, even if it's just 1 out of a billion, that's still, those are odds I can those are odds I can divvy up with. But yes, that's just me. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. I hope that you don't have to crash out on anybody, and I hope you're not doing dirt where somebody has to crash out on you. Okay, bye.